We're going to look at the surface area of prisms. So prism is a 3D object that has two identical ends and has flat sides. So if we look at a rectangular prism, the faces we can recognize in 2D. For example, we have a face, the front here, and we usually calculate the area as length times width. And then we also have another shape over here that is also a rectangle, and we usually calculate the area of that shape as length times width. But what I want to do is calculate the surface area of all the sides. So I'm going to give you a formula sheet when you do your practice problems, and you need to determine what shape it is and which formula to use, and then how to plug in the sides so you can find the surface area of the entire prism. So for this one, this is called a rectangular prism. And the surface area formula for that is 2 length times width plus 2 length times height plus 2 height times width. So my length is 5, my height is 4, and my width is 3. If we think about where this formula comes from, just think about the different sides we have. This is the front face, and this is a 5 by 4. In other words, this is length, and this is height. And then I know I have the one that's at the top, the face at the top. This one's 5 with a width of 3. And then I have my last face here on the side with a height of 4 and a width of 3. So these were the 3 formulas are coming from, and we're going to times them each by 2 because you have 2 of those. We have this one, which is front and back. So this is one, that's front and back. This one is top and bottom, and this one is our 2 sides. So this length times height, that's this calculation here. Height times width correlates with 3, and length times width correlates with 2. So that's where this formula is coming from. Okay, but we don't necessarily need to draw this to figure it out. I'm just showing you where this formula comes from. Now that we found our length, height, and width, we just plug those numbers in. So this is 2 times, my length is 5. My width is 3. 2 times length is 5. My height is 4. And then I have height times width, which is 4 times 3. So if I simplify this, I'm going to multiply the terms first. So this would be 30 plus 40 plus 24, which is equal to 94 meters squared. Do not forget the squared. We're looking at surface area, so we're looking at 2-dimensional sides from these ones. Because our units are in 2 dimensions, then we need to indicate that in our units. So this now is a cylinder. Which is the formula for 2 pi times r times h plus 2 pi r squared. So h is the height of the cylinder and r is the radius. This part right here, it comes from the wraparound of our cylinder, and this 2 pi r squared comes from the circle. At the top and bottom, we times it by 2 because it's top and bottom of the cylinder. So that's where those come from. So 2 pi times r is 20, and my height is 60, plus 2 pi, my r is 20 squared. Now I'm going to simplify this and figure out what the surface area is. I'll just leave this in terms of pi because it looks cleaner that way. So I'll just do 20 times 60 times 2, which is 2,400. I'm just going to leave the pi with it. And then 20 squared is 400. And then 2 times 400 is 800. Now I'm going to add them together. And when we add like terms, we just leave the pi alone. If you wanted to, you could punch it all into the calculator at once to get the answer. And you should have gotten this equivalent to 3,200 times pi. And if you were to punch that in the calculator, you would get 10,053. And this is in centimeters, so centimeters squared. You could also equally punch this all into the calculator and get the same answer in the very beginning. Just be careful when you punch it in the calculator because it's really easy to make a mistake. And that would be kind of unfortunate. Moving on to the next shape. We have a triangular prism with a rectangle base. We call this triangular prisms because we have a triangle as its sides, but then a rectangle for the base. And the area, formula for the area of this shape is height times base plus side times length plus base times length plus height times length. So the S actually stands for slant height, and your slant height is this line right here, the slant of our shape. This is what's not given to us, and we would need to find it. So our height of our shape is 12. Our base of our rectangle is 6, and we have a length of 15. To find the side, I'm going to need to do Pythagoras. So my h is 12, and my b is 6, and I'm looking for my hypotenuse, which is my longest side. So 12 squared is 144. 6 squared is 36, and then when I add those two together, that's 180. But I want to find just s, so I need to square root both sides, which gives me the square root of 180, which is 13.42 if you put it into your calculator. Okay, so now we're going to find the area here. So the base times the height is our triangles, and that's for our two triangles that we have here. And then the slant times the length will give us this side here. The base times the length is the bottom. And then height times length will give us this side here. Okay, so h times b, that's 12 times 6. Our slant we found is 13.42, and and that's going to be times by 15. Then our base is 6. We'll multiply that by 15. And lastly, our height is 12. We're going to multiply that by our length, which is 15. So simplifying my multiplication terms, I get 72 plus 201.3 plus 90 plus 180. And once I add all those together, I get 543.3 feet squared. And our last example is another triangular prism, also with a rectangle base. But in this case here, I'm given my slant height, but I do not have my vertical height here. So I don't know what h is. This is my base and this is my length. This is a different type of formula, because before this has a right triangle. In fact, this is a right triangular prism because it has a right angle. Versus this one down here, this is a triangular prism as well, but it's not a right one. So a triangular prism and this is also with a rectangle base. And this area would be base times height plus 2 length times slant height plus length times base. So our base times height will give us the front face and the back face. Our side times length would give us our side here, the large rectangular side, and there's 2 of them, 1 on each side, so we times that one by 2. And the length times base, we only have 1 of that, which is our bottom, the base of the entire prism. So our base we found was 10. We don't have our height yet, and we need to find that. And again, we're going to have to use Pythagoras to find it. So this one needs to be a bit careful when you are trying to calculate this. Usually to find the height, we would need this length here. Well, we know the entire length is 10, but I only need about half of that. So if I'm just looking at this side here that I need, that's 5. And I know my slant height, my hypotenuse is 8. So if I plug this into Pythagoras, that's 5 squared plus b squared equals our hypotenuse squared, which is 8 squared. Okay, I'm not going to use b actually, I'll use h because we're looking for the height. Okay, so this is 25 plus h squared equals 64. If I subtract both sides by 25, then I will be left with 64 minus 25 on one side and then just h squared on the other. This is 39. But I want the root, I have to take the root of both sides to find what h is equal to. So if I take the root of both sides and I plug in to see what the root of 39 is, that will give me 6.24. So we know that h is 6.24. So then I'll plug that into my formula here for h. Okay, and I have 2 times my length, which is 18. And then length times side, which is 18. Oh, no, it's length times base, sorry. And that would be 18. My base is 10. So if I multiply some of these terms together here, I get 62.4 plus 288 plus 180, and altogether this would be 530.4. This will be millimeters squared. And then that's it. So like I said, you're going to be given the formula sheet for all these triangular prisms, and you don't need to memorize these formulas, you just need to know how to use them. And then you'll get a practice sheet to practice more on how to do this.